The global shortage of semiconductors is hitting automakers around the world. Here in Korea, General Motors has had to shut down 2 of its plants for a week. And Hyundai Motor once again suspended its Sonata plant on Monday and Tuesday. The shortage has gone on for months and there's little sign of improvement. So how is it that this shortage came to affect the entire global supply chain? And how is the situation being dealt with by companies and governments? For more on this, our Sungmin joins us here in the studio. So, Sungmin, you've spent some time digging into this issue. Just how serious would you say the situation is now?
Hi, Devin. It's actually quite serious right now. Just in South Korea, the automobile industry is forecast to produce 120,000 fewer units this year due to the chip shortage. That's roughly 3.4% of the 3.5 million cars the Korean automakers produced last year. GM Korea is the latest Korean auto company to halt its assembly lines. 2 days ago, it suspended production at its Bupyeong plants 1 and 2 for a week.
3.4%. It sounds like this is a major hit to take for these companies.
Yes, given that the combined production of the 2 plants amounted to some 23,000 units in March, they're expected to see a loss of around 6,000 units.
And GM, of course, isn't the only one. Let's see, other car makers need a lot of chips, of course, for the high-tech cars that they're making these days. So how about the others?
Yes, Hyundai Motor suspended 2 factories, one of them being the plant producing the company's all-electric vehicle Ioniq 5, which was launched just 2 days ago to great fanfare. But with the halt, industry watchers expect a loss of 6,500 units of the model, which is huge considering 40,000 units have been pre-booked ahead of the official launch. As for other global firms, General Motors and Ford have shut down some of their North American factories since February and are extending their shutdowns. In February, GM said it expected the chip shortage to cut its earnings by up to $2 billion this year. That's almost as much as its quarterly net profit, as the company made $2.85 billion in the 4th quarter of last year. Ford also said its earnings will be hit by $1 to $2.5 billion in 2021. And overall, the consulting firm Alex Partners expects the shortage will cost the global automobile industry $60.6 billion in revenue this year.
Well, Sungmin, cars these days have so many features that they didn't used to have even just 5 years ago. A lot of people might not realize just how essential these semiconductors are to the car industry.
Right, automobiles might not be the first thing to pop up in our heads when we think of semiconductors, but surprisingly, around 200 to 300 chips are needed to build just one car. They're used for making sensors to detect obstacles when parking, to check the pressure of tires, and for airbags to deploy. This is for automobiles in general, but electric cars need 2 to 3 times more chips, and self-driving cars need more than 2,000 chips for one car.
So everything from the airbags to the door locks to the self-driving systems that they have these days. But going back a little bit, how did this whole shortage situation come about?
Well, simply put, the industry failed to forecast the demand. With the COVID-19 raging across borders, many expected the automobile industry to be hit hard. So manufacturers producing chips for cars, they shifted their assembly lines to produce semiconductors for other IT products like PCs and smartphones, which saw massive increases in demand with the social distancing measures. But the automobile industry bounced back quicker than anyone could have expected, to the point where the supply couldn't keep up with the demand.
And if we go beyond Korea, looking at the biggest chip foundry in the world, TSMC in Taiwan, they lost power at a facility which cost them up to $27 million worth of production. So surely this would have made the situation for those who need these chips around the world much worse.
Yes, you're right. There have been some other issues that severely aggravated the supply shortage, as well as the power outage at TSMC, the winter storm that ravaged Texas, the center of U.S. semiconductor manufacturing, forced many factories to shut earlier this year. And Japan's Renesas, the world's 3rd largest automobile chip producer, also suffered a factory fire that could take 4 months to recover from. And these incidents all further deepened the already serious global chip supply woes.
Well, now a lot of people might be wondering, this is South Korea, which is a powerhouse when it comes to chip production. And yet, we're affected by this too. It turns out that South Korean chip makers actually don't produce the kinds of chips that are needed for automobiles. In fact, Korean automakers import 98% of the chips that they need. Tell us about that.
Yeah, it seems a bit ironic, but experts say that local chip firms actually prefer to concentrate on other types of chips.
There has been constant research on automotive chips, but domestic car manufacturers prefer foreign products and automotive chips have low profitability. So the local supply ended up being very small. They chose not to produce them. It's not that they can't produce them.
So, Sungmin, I think you've laid out the case pretty well here about how serious this problem is and how many regions of the world and industries and companies that it affects. But how are companies and how are governments responding to this? How are we dealing with it?
Well, automobile companies are, of course, trying to secure as much stock as possible. But what's more interesting is the effort coming from the government. Just last week, South Korea had an expanded economy-related ministerial meeting where President Moon Jae-in pledged strong support. They're expected to come up with a detailed plans within the first half of this year, including assistance to improve the weak supply chain, adjusting the amount of tax deducted for research and development, and expanding investment. The country, in fact, has broader plans for next generation cars, planning to spend $330 million for R&D into next generation vehicles. And other nations are also ramping up efforts to place themselves at the center of the global automotive chip supply chain. U.S. President Joe Biden recently met with executives in the semiconductor industry and proposed $50 billion of support for chip manufacturing and research. China aims to increase its local semiconductor supply by up to 70% by 2025.
So it seems like governments really are taking this issue seriously, as Biden's semiconductor summit that you pointed out and other ways that manufacturers are trying to address this. But at this point, how long do we think that the semiconductor shortage will last?
Well, Devin, unfortunately, experts say that this might prevent the future shortage in the long term, but will not become an instant fix.
The impact could last until next year due to unexpected situations along with rapidly growing global car industry, especially electric cars. Even if the chip makers increase their production, it'll take at least a year.
As I briefly mentioned, the fact that we're at the transition period into next generation cars could put even more pressure on the industry. But I guess this incident has become a very valuable lesson for many countries because it'll definitely accelerate the development of semiconductors, which are crucial for future industries.
So it could stretch into next year, but it's a lesson that countries will remember long beyond that. Thank you, Sungmin, for being here today.
Thank you.